Historically, I was talking about
Something grabbed
historically.
a hold of me tightly. Flew like a hawk both daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo, I don't know. Turn off the light and I'll glow. To the extreme, I rock a mic like a vandal. Light up the stage like a chump with a candle.
Drop the bass.
What up, buttons? It's your boys, Adam Stark.
And Alan Roper. And we ask you, what in the sampling do those buttons do?
How do you make these buttons sample?
You got to sample them. We're at the
Why
grocery
won't
store.
it sample?
We're at the grocery store, and you're walking by, and you're just trying to pick up some lettuce and some tomatoes. But then there's somebody with a cart that goes, "Would you like to try this?" And you're like, "I guess." And then you try it, and you're like, "That was amazing, but I don't want any more." And then you continue on your way to the produce section. That's
Yep.
what we're talking about today.
I don't know. I always circle back for seconds, especially if it's at Costco. They don't care. They literally like say, take 2 or 3. We have so many.
trying to-
You see that
they're
aisle
just-
back there? That entire aisle is what I'm selling.
They're like, "We just want to get done doing this. Take 200 of them. We just want to be done."
All right, cool. Well, today we are talking about sampling and
Sampling.
also warping, which is a
warping.
good fundamental part of it. We're not talking about like using the sampler or simpler, which we have kind of We've talked about the simpler. We will be talking about the sampler later. But this is sampling of actually taking an audio file and actually turning that into something by chopping it up or changing it and kind of fitting it into your music. So we're going to go over that a little bit today. I know that Alan does have a little bit of history about sampling and that he wanted to tell us about. But before we jump into that, we just wanted to remind you, don't forget to hit the like button, please.
Hit it. Just hit it
like
like you're
button.
mad at it, you know?
Like, share, subscribe, do all those fun things, the normal things, the good things that help, boost the channel and get it out there to more people. Because what we want to try and do is share knowledge. Yes.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of knowledge, Alan, hit us with some.
So sampling. All right, historically, sampling has been around forever. Hip hop is famous for sampling, and so many people try to detract and be like, "You're stealing this, you're stealing that." And while copyright is important, and I support that, I think the idea behind sampling was to grab something that everyone knows and bring it in so they have that immediate attachment to it. And they're like, "Oh, I know this." And then you fall in love with the recreation. Famously, Vanilla Ice with Ice Ice Baby, he pulled from David Bowie and Freddie Mercury or Queen, Under Pressure, which is an amazing song. He added like one note or something like that, and I think he kind of got away with it a little bit. But basically, he used something that was well known in a completely different genre and flipped it in a way that became like mainstream mass. Everyone loved it. And while I'm not knocking Vanilla Ice, lyrically it wasn't like so advanced, but it was so interesting. A lot of draw from that was that sample, in my opinion. And I'm not the creator, but I definitely know that when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, so this is that song, but recreated. So
Right.
I think a lot of people do that, and a lot of gets lost in the legality of it because, I mean, you're pulling from someone else's original art and you're making it your own. Now, while that's not okay in some circles and definitely not on the legal aspect, and, people like Robin Thicke and others have been like pulled for, that kind of thing.
More recently, even just bass lines. Bass lines have been killing people lately.
Right. I mean, there's only so many iterations of notes, and like if you're gonna make something, you could literally make the same bass line with yourself and be like, oh, well, this is the same notes. That's a little different than like pulling the sample and using that as something. But nonetheless, the idea is that when you hear something, you have that immediate attachment in your mind, whether it's from growing up or whatever. Like for me, Final Fantasy, when I hear anything Final Fantasy, immediately, nostalgic immediately. I'm like, oh, so if I sample Final Fantasy, the idea isn't to steal from it, it's to give that feeling of like nostalgia. I'm actually working on something right now. That's funny.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's the kind of like where the original idea I believe came from. Wasn't just to like not be creative and do your own thing. It was just like, man, that sounds so good, and it has a feeling to it, a vibe to it, or like a memory, or like you
Right.
said, a nostalgic thing, and it draws you in. So you use that as a way to open the door to people's minds or hearts or whatever, and then you rebuild something that's interesting. That's how I've always understood sampling. When I was younger, I would take loops, like long loops or something, and put beats over it. And I thought that was so cool for doing that. Don't do that anymore. No need. But just finding little pieces of things, or especially nowadays, like vocal samples, like say, I think what you're going to show is an Ellie Goulding flip.
Yeah.
So taking something like Ellie Goulding, and we've had friends that use Ellie Goulding in this one particular track, and just flipping the sample and like creating your own music behind it, but using the vocals as a push to be like, oh, that sounds sick because it's Ellie. I mean, there's Chris Brown remixes that like our buddy Ryan did, and like they're very original musically, but the vocals
Right.
are just like the
Yeah.
acapella that he flipped or he stretched or he slowed down or sped up or whatever and tuned it to his track, and that's like a whole different thing altogether. Like it just gives you that feeling that you had originally with the song, but it's so new too, and you have your own music behind it. I mean, there's so many levels of sampling. Sorry. So basically, there's some levels of sampling. Like we had Diego Stacco video on where he's sampling from a tree. That's one level. That's making your own sounds with a microphone, and that's originality at its finest. And then there's using other basically it's appropriation. You're appropriating someone else's music to make something for yourself, and whether the idea is to make money or just to give that feeling. Sometimes DJs that produce, real DJs, they'll do that just for shows, just for fun, and it's not about lucrative money opportunity. It's just about like that, giving that vibe at a live show. And like sampling can be a very beautiful and unique thing that should not be overlooked and should not be considered stealing necessarily. Like
Right.
if you're literally ripping something off and putting it out as your own with no, you're not clearing the sample or whatever, and you're not, changing it in a way that will make it so obvious, then okay, you deserve whatever shit you get from it. However, if you're doing it for fun and you're doing it for shows, or you're doing it for whatever, just to enjoy and have a good time with music, as we all love to do, then, who cares, whatever. But if you get the business aspect involved, you need to clear your samples, or you need to, reach out to the publisher, the label, the artist, all three, and make sure that's all good to go.
Right.
That's important. However, we're going to move forward, and Adam's going to show you something where we're doing this for fun at the moment. I imagine if you wanted to clear the sample, it takes no time at all.
Yeah.
He would. So
Absolutely.
this is something that Adam put together for sampling. I just wanted to kind of talk about the essence of it and how it has like a draw for the soul. Like people hear a song and they're like, oh my gosh, I know that, but they don't know what's coming. And that's a beautiful thing.
Exactly. So with sampling, there comes a little bit of, at least in Ableton's, one of the nice things that Ableton allows us to do. I'm going to go ahead and pull this in. And this is already kind of a 4 on the floor beat, but Ableton's going to want to warp it. So the first part about with this is just the warping. Again, this one's already 4 on the floor, and it's gotten a lot better on figuring it out on what it's actually warped to. And basically all that means is that it's going to try and put these in line with how, with the time signature on how that actually works. So this one's pretty much set up the way that it needs to be. I'm going to check it to make sure that we don't need to nudge any of the stuff on there. And I'll just turn on the thing here. It looks like the sample is running at about 127 or 128, which sounds about right. So Ableton already set it to 127.93. Which means that this should be relatively in time with our clicker here. So
look at what you've done. Stand still, falling away from me.
that's pretty good. That's pretty.
Oh, I am Ellie Goulding.
There you go. Yeah, that was amazing. I'm gonna bump these up just a little bit. So what you can do, if you need to nudge these just a little bit, you can actually add more markers to it, and you can bump them and move them around. So something important to know, though, is that when you are actually moving these, if you move it where there is no marker yet, these little gray little dots here, if you move them, and those are the transients, by the way, of what it's picked out on.
They're homeless?
They're no, those are yes, exactly. They're little homeless markers on this thing. So we need to give them a home But you put it on, when you pull those over, it's going to warp everything after it to try and match what's going on there, and kind of pull everything in. So you can see that now that I've pulled that in, it put it at about 126 BPM, or a little above, more towards 127 bottom end. So I'm going to set that there, and so that's going to be my transient marker there. But that bumped everything else off. So if I wanted to... So I want to fix these. I'm going to put them back so that they're on, and that looks a lot better now. So I'm just going to do these. You usually just have to do a couple, as long as you're...
You're talking about the markers?
Yeah, the markers on there.
Yeah.
I usually jump ahead to some of these to where I'll double check, say this is a break. If I'm going to use... I'm not going to use it in this, but just an example. I jump a little bit ahead and see.
So you give me.
So that was off. So let's go ahead...
I mean, based on your like settings or whatever in Ableton, the algorithm does a pretty damn good job of keeping it on point. You just have to fix a little bit of fine tuning or whatever.
Yeah. This is
it
just a
amazing.
little. It's usually pretty good. So
You give me no reason for me to stay close to you. Tell me.
So what I'll do there is I'll go ahead and make that a marker as well, and that way that fixes that point, so that if I change anything after it, nothing before it is now moving.
Yeah, it's concrete.
So I'll go ahead and undo that. Looks like everything else is pretty good. I'm actually going to not use the rest of this either. We're just going to play around with this first part. So that's pretty much all you got to do for warping. Some things will get really messed up if it's not so kind of normal or with a beat, or hip hop can get a little bit off depending on how the person is rapping to it, where they're hitting, if they're not hitting on ones, or just if they're trying to hit just after or just before, depending on how their flow works, that can get a little dicey there. And it allows you to clean it up too. Say if you have a vocalist that comes in and no matter how hard they try, they always hit right after. I've known a couple of people that no matter what you tell them, no matter what you give them a click track, you give them everything, they're always behind the rhythm of it. So that's an easy way to fix that. And be like, just do your thing, as long as it sounds good. Well, the rest of it sounds good. You can easily fix it up by just nudging everything over, and putting those on there.
Shout out to the Ableton algorithm.
Yeah. So once you have that, we can jump up here, and let's say I'm going to take this first part.
Look at what you've done.
So I just want that. I'm going to take this, and there's multiple ways that you can do this. You can just drag down and click it there. It'll cut it out to be basically a duplicate of this. We can get rid of this, but if you notice here, it's still there. I just cut it down.
We can just hold
this.
Option and drag it down.
Yes, if you hold, that's the other way to do it too, is if you hold, well, you can do no Option and it'll cut it out. Or if you wanted to actually duplicate it, you can hold down Option on Macs, Control on Windows. So if I just wanted to be a reference track that I can pull from, we'll keep it on this one. It brought all that over. But I also don't want to be working with the whole track. So what you can do is you can do Consolidate, which is Control or Option J, and this will just basically make this its own sample. There's now nothing after it. This is its own thing.
You just consolidate
It becomes
right?
Yeah, it becomes its own file. So let's work with that. Let's shrink this down. So, I mean, that's pretty much the main part of it, of sampling something. Then you basically just put it to a beat or a rhythm or anything like that. So let's go ahead.
And there's so much you can affect that with too, but this
Yeah.
is just the cut and paste, you know.
Let's go ahead and open up Splice here and just grab a drum loop. We'll go ahead and bring a drum clip in here. And what I want to do is I'm going to grab something. Sure, let's go with that. Simple, straight to the point. Let's throw this in here.
Straight up and down.
So 120, cool, and it's close to. This one's at 130. So one thing that you'll notice when you bring in clips that aren't on their original BPM that they were, first made on, is you're gonna get a little bit of sound warpage. Can't really hear it on that one as much as you can on her voice.
Look at what you've done.
Kind of jitters a little bit. Well, what you can do to fix that, and you're mostly going to use this on everything, especially if you are changing time signatures. If you're sampling, you're most likely changing time signatures.
You're talking about the warp setting, right?
No, is this the warp setting? No.
Like Complex Pro.
Is
and
that
all
warp setting?
I mean, that's what I call it. I don't know what it's called.
I don't know what it's called either, but
Because I didn't write it.
Whatever this is called, you basically want to set this to either Complex or Complex Pro.
For vocals, particularly.
Specifically for vocals. But these all do a little bit of different things on there. But what this is going to do is that's going to clean up any of those weird pops and clicks and transients of
lags and stuff.
Yeah. So.
Look at what you've done. Look at what you've done.
There's still a little bit in that one.
Look at what you've done.
Right there. I'm wondering if that's just actually part of it.
Look at what you've done.
Yeah, right there. Whatever.
A little bit of reverb. Hide that.
I'm going to click on that too. And the other thing that we can do with that is on beat, it won't work as well. Complex Pro and Complex, you can it works pretty well where you can actually change the tone of it. You can you can transpose it.
Change the pitch.
That works pretty well, but there's actually another setting in here called tones. Or repitch works also. I don't actually know the hard code of what they're specifically done. You can play around them because they'll each give just a little bit of a different. I believe repitch allows you to change the pitch with the warping of it, where the tone allows you to actually change and transpose it here by either steps or what are these synths? Synths.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are made for, like, the Beats one's made. I mean, you could use it for percussion, and it works really well. You can use tone. Like, if you have polysynths or monosynths, some of these settings work better for them. Vocals, Complex Pro, because it's already like a mastered, finished thing, and you're stretching something and trying to continue like the original sound, even if you're changing the pitch or you're slowing it down. You want it to still sound not choppy. You want it to sound smooth like a vocalist. That's where Complex Pro comes in the majority of the time.
So what we can do for that, and I'm still sampled on there. So let's see what it does.
Look at what you've done. Look at what you've done.
We can have Chickmunks. Mm-hmm. Oh God,
that
goes so high
now. You gotta tune it to your track. Whether
you can tune it to your track.
Look at what.
The drums or the bass or whatever.
Yeah, we can just have the Alvin and the Chickmunks.
Look at what you've done.
It's definitely the small one, the
Ellie
green one.
and the Gouldings, bro.
Ellie and the Gouldings. That's the green one.
Look at what.
But we're just going to chop this one up. So you can play around with that too and have fun with it. So let's see what we got here. I'm going to take each one of these and I'm going to break them off a little piece of those Kit Kats.
Break me off a piece. Sorry.
And make them their own.
Is it a left or right Kit Kat? Because that shit is very important now.
The left or the
I think
right?
Kit Kat became really political.
I did not
videos
know
are
about
like,
that.
That's a left Kit. That's two left Kit Kats. I feel like there's an agenda there.
I didn't know that Kit Kat went political.
Go.
I don't know that they did. It's just an assumption.
Let's see. So I'm gonna break this up a little bit. See what.
Look. Go.
Whoop.
Look. Go. What.
Oh.
Look. Go. What. Look. Go. What. You.
Let's bring this in.
Look. Go. What. You.
Let's make sure that goes with a beat. I don't know why I didn't have that on.
Look. Go. What. You.
Yeah. There we go. And then I'm going to double this one. So I'm just holding down Control while clicking it, which will duplicate it. Or you can hit Control C, click where you want it, Control V. That will also copy and paste it. So let's play this here.
Look what you've done.
I'm going to
Nice.
give that a little bit off there and there.
Look what you've done.
Do that there, and let's see.
Look what you've done, done, done.
Oh, let's bring that up here. I didn't like where that was. So this is pretty much what you can do. You can just chop it up and just do all of these.
Done, done, done.
I'm gonna squeeze that there. Let's see.
Let go on you. Done, done, done.
I liked it there. I'm gonna leave it there. We'll do that.
Let go on you. Done, 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 done.
And we'll make that flip one more time to there. Bam.
Done. Let go on you. Done, 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 done. Let go on
There
you.
you go. That's pretty much it. That's, I mean, all sampling is just, I mean, you're going to be doing that anyways. So if you bring in samples of drums, if you bring in samples of vocals, if you bring in samples of anything, in Ableton, this is how you're going to kind of approach it. And you can do, again, a bunch of stuff with it. If I wanted to change any of these up, like let's put these to a fifth. I'm going to bring them a fifth up on this one and this one. And so you can change each one individually. So you can do this.
Let go on you. Done, 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 done.
I didn't like the fifth, but
But either way, it's just warping it and matching the tempo, and then tuning it to where,
Let's do a
whether it's in the key of your track or it's just in the way that you appreciate the sound of, but ideally tuning it to your track. And that comes in, like, when you have a kick drum too, you want to tune it to your track. Even that's overlooked a lot. It's just all about getting in the key.
actually there's a hot debate right there, as kind of a tangent there. Tuning kicks, there's no real need unless you have a low end kick that's like long lasting. There's no need to tune your kicks, specifically because there's just supposed to be a punch. You can add some new like some stuff in there, but literally a kick is so quick. Even snares like snares themselves can last longer depending on how you're doing it, but kicks are just hit, just doom doom. But if you're doing like 808s and stuff like that, obviously you've got to tune them, because that's your basically your bass. You're basically turning that into your bass line. But yeah.
Well, when I say tune kicks, sometimes people use a sample of a kick and it doesn't really match the vibe of the song. It doesn't have to be tuned to the key necessarily, but it has to be like turned down a little bit so it like fits the softness of maybe not the key, but like the way it hits. If you want a really tight kick and you have something like, ooh, I'm not talking about 808s, but like a really soft like acoustic kick, and you want something tight for like 4 on the floor, you have to like tweak the sound design on that. And also you can tune. I was working on a track today and I have 2 kicks overlapping each other, and like I had to tune one down to match the other one, and then that made the overall song sound way better.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, there's a time and place for it, but yeah, it isn't necessarily necessary to hit the key. But detuning or uptuning the pitch on drums can be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll change the what do they call it? The timbre of it. So yeah, so it's with a lot of drum stuff, it's not really, you don't have to care about the key as much, like what key you're in or anything like that for your drums. I know some people, even with like live sets of drums, are really anal about that type of stuff, but really it's just coming down to, does the timbre fit the genre that you're playing? Do they fit your song? Plain and simple. So yes, tuning it just makes them fit into that box, but whether it's a specific note or anything like that.
Think about a live band. Like a drummer will tune his drum kit.
Oh yeah.
So there's a time and place for that. But with electronic music, like you said, it's not necessarily important to tune to the key, but if you have a drum that doesn't seem like it fits, or it's thin, or it needs to be doubled up or whatever, same idea basically.
Yeah.
And a good job with that sample. That was like 5 minutes.
We'll cut that part out and make a little tidbit. We'll just throw a tidbit video with that drum bit thing.
That's fine.
But yeah, because that was fun information, but it doesn't fit our sampling episode really, or I guess it does.
Sorry.
No. I was the one who took that on a tangent. You mentioned it, but then I was like, ah.
You're like, fuck what you think. It doesn't matter. It's not important to me. I want you to know that I control everything, including the dynamic.
Go,
Hold on, let's see what this.
want you done, done.
But yeah, you can do things like that in there. I'm gonna go ahead and set those back.
Hey,
to
how did
zero.
Ellie Goulding like sing and have enough time to hit the helium in the middle of that, and it wore off just in time
Ableton?
for the
That's
last
how.
two?
That's how.
Oh, she's an Ableton user. I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
she's an Ableton user. It's all fake.
So hilarious.
All right, well, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a little bit fun about sampling. If you guys want to know more about it, we can always do deeper dives on certain things. Don't be afraid to ask us some questions. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Yet again, check out our Patreon. A link for that is down in this description. And as always, thanks for joining us, and we'll keep asking those questions. What those
Buttons do. Peace
Drop
out.
the bass.